In the spring of 2023, Tribe of Nova announced its Supernova Sukkot gathering in Israel on October 6th to 7th. As we all know, this joyous occasion resulted in death and destruction, the likes of which no one could have foreseen. "Dear Tribe of Nova," they wrote, "we are thrilled and filled with pride and excitement to announce a truly exceptional and unprecedented event that will take place for the very first time in Israel, billed as the most powerful and meaningful psytrance music festival to come to Israel. It represented the heart and soul of the Brazilian trance music community. The festival attracted over 3,500 people aged 20 to 40 from 36 countries. Read more." The announcement also expanded on the name. The word supernova refers to the explosion of a massive star, causing an immense burst of light in galactic terms. In the most tragic of ironies, it then goes on to ask, what can one imagine when these concepts intertwine during the upcoming Sukkot holiday? We assume that you can already imagine the result. Or perhaps not. A room in the exhibition displays the names and faces of all the Nova Festival goers who were murdered on October 7th. It ends by inviting everyone to dive together with us into a tribal journey in what it describes as a breathtaking location. In a cruel twist of fate, the location was switched 2 days before, after the original festival site in southern Israel did not work out. Instead, it took place near Kibbutz Reem, 5 miles from the Gaza border, which at the time wasn't considered dangerous. Aside from a few potential missile attacks, the area was regarded as quiet. Tragically, the festival became the site of the largest terror attack and the worst Israeli civilian massacre in the country's history. 364 civilians were killed there and many more wounded, while another 40 were taken hostage by the Hamas terrorists who flooded across the border and initiated surprise, deadly attacks on the communities there. The following day, the festival organizers took immediate action to start the journey of healing the victims of the Nova community by setting up the Tribe of Nova Foundation, an Israeli non-profit organization, Nova website. The aim was to provide assistance for those impacted by the events, including financial aid, social integration, mental and occupational therapies for the survivors and their families, as well as the abductees who are still in Gaza. In addition, the foundation coordinates commemorations in memory of the members of the Nova tribe community who did not survive. Consequently, the foundation set up the Nova Music Festival exhibition, an in-depth remembrance of the brutal October 7th attack. Premiered in the Tel Aviv Convention Center, the exhibition ran for 10 weeks and was visited by thousands, including many survivors of the massacre, such as Daniel Ozuri. Leaving the exhibition for some fresh air, Ozuri recalls in detail how he and his best friend escaped the festival grounds and survived, while some of his close friends and countless others with familiar faces from years of trance parties did not, the Jerusalem Post. "It really brings me back there and the horrific pain of that moment, but we have to return there to memorialize what happened and remember our friends who were killed there," he stated. After the Tel Aviv run, the organizers, headed by creator, director, and writer Roy Feingold, joined forces with their U.S. partners to transfer the large-scale remembrance installation titled October 7th, 6:29 a.m. The moment music stood still to New York. The exhibition opened in Manhattan on April 21st for 4 weeks and was later extended to June 22nd. Presented as a way to empower visitors to responsibly explore the events of October 7th and its aftermath, the Nova exhibition will transform a 50,000-square-foot venue, introducing New Yorkers to one of the largest historical installations ever presented, the website stated. Arguably the largest outreach and commemoration project telling the story of October 7th in general and the Nova community in particular, Feingold, together with producer Omri Sassi, decided to include material that had not been shown in Israel. The exhibition utilized a narrative throughout to present the story of the Supernova Festival as it developed on that dark day. It started by focusing on the dancing, the music, and the values. The focus of the display then shifted to the moment when the music was stopped by the shooting as the horrors of the massacre unfolded. First-hand accounts of people hiding from the terrorists, descriptions of the sexual violence, as well as details of terrorists themselves preparing for the attack were included, to give visitors some idea of the horrors faced by those who were at the festival, many of whom were murdered or severely wounded. Surrounded by items taken from the festival grounds, such as scorched cars, bullet-riddled bathroom stalls, and personal belongings, The exhibition created a sacred space, echoing the weight of the victims' and survivors' memories. Nova website. Some survivors attended the exhibition to bear as witnesses to the tragedy they experienced that day, as well as bereaved family members who shared heart-rending stories about their lost loved ones with the visitors. One woman who has been closely involved with the New York exhibition since its inception is Canadian-born Israeli freelance translator and editor Juliana Brown. To find out more about her role in the New York exhibition and how it came about, the Jerusalem Report spoke with her. She said that while scrolling on Facebook, she saw a post seeking someone to translate from Hebrew to English for an exhibition. Without knowing any further details about the exhibition or the nature of the material she'd be translating, she contacted them. Only later, after 2 separate conversations with the team, did she realize the full enormity of the task she'd taken on. It finally occurred to me that I didn't know what it was, she confided. As part of the process of transferring the exhibition in its entirety from Tel Aviv to New York, all of the information relating to the exhibits had to be translated into English, which wasn't as straightforward as you'd imagine. There were some texts that were adjusted because culturally, they needed to explain a lot. The texts included short bios of all the deceased, written by family and friends, Brown explained. I found myself diving into the Nova exhibition for 3 to 4 weeks, she said. It was such a privilege, and I became so immersed in it that I didn't sleep. During this very intense period, Brown received photos from bereaved parents of their children who had been murdered, along with a short text that included things they wanted people to remember them by. Brown, the mother of 5 children ranging in age from 6 to 21, struggled to keep going at times. I'd immediately see my own child when I looked at the picture, she said softly, as she knew some of the victims, which made her job even more difficult. After a week, I stopped opening the pictures because I couldn't focus on the text, she said. Once she'd found a coping mechanism, Brown worked her way through the list of victims. I could only manage 4 to 5 bios at a time, she said. The translated text pushes different buttons in different people. Although not all parents participated, Brown confirmed that most did, including a significant number of religious ones. Some are still not sure what happened to their loved ones. Brown also had the harrowing task of working on the descriptive texts accompanying the photos and exhibits. Very graphic descriptions provided by those who were there at the time were translated for the U.S. audience. These included testimony by victims and survivors, as well as members of the security forces. Every possible description of the horror came across her desk, she said. I could only do one, then I was done for the day. Having immersed herself in this work for weeks, Brown said that when it was done and I was finally finished, it felt strange to close the last file and send it off. Although she never got to see the fruits of her labors firsthand in New York, just seeing photos from the exhibition gave her a sense of satisfaction. OMG, I did that while the kids were fighting all around me, she thought to herself wryly. The original equipment from the Supernova Festival below a "We Will Dance Again" sign. The New York exhibition was a resounding success, attracting 100,000 visitors, which included diplomats, ambassadors, mayors, MKs, and prominent business leaders. Although it ended on June 22nd, this did not spell the end of the exhibition. In a recent press release, the organizers announced that 6:29 a.m., the commemorative display of the Nova community in New York, was moving to Los Angeles. In a recent telephone call, the organizers were able to confirm to the Jerusalem Report that the Los Angeles run would commence in August. However, for security reasons, they were unable to provide any more information, such as its location and precise dates. While the scale and horrors of the Supernova Festival massacre were unprecedented, on their website the organizers note that the Nova exhibition looks beyond the brutality and evil that occurred on October 7th to capture the enduring spirit of the Nova tribe with the installation of a healing tent. It ends with the words, "This special structure is a lighthouse declaring we will dance again." Exhibition excerpts for those who are not able to visit the Nova exhibition. Below are some excerpts from the text translated by Juliana Brown. Warning: some excerpts contain extremely distressing material. Route 232 and the Cars Route 232, an access point to many of the communities surrounding Gaza and the Ream parking lot, was taken over by Hamas terrorists on the morning of the attack. Some of them were dressed in IDF uniforms, stationed at intersections along the road, lying in wait from dawn to prey on cars packed with approaching festival revelers. The terrorists systematically shot at the lines of cars, burning the occupants of the vehicles alive. Hundreds of cars were abandoned as their owners fled the murderous attackers, leaving behind personal belongings, camping equipment, and personal effects. Evidence of joy suddenly cut short. The parking lot that was used for the festival and the paths around it were transformed into a scene of destruction and massacre. Long lines of burnt and bullet-riddled car skeletons, and next to them human corpses on the sides of the road completed a blood-curdling picture, testifying to the brutality of the vile terrorists. The atrocities committed along the stretch of road included acts of rape and torture, sadistic abuse and sexual assault of the victims and their bodies. In the days following the attack, over 850 vehicles, most of them belonging to Nova Festival participants, were evacuated from the Gaza envelope to a designated area adjacent to Moshav Tkuma. The vehicles, even those that had morphed into a shapeless lump of metal, were inspected and cleaned by volunteer organizations prominent, among them the Zaka organization, a search, identification, and rescue organization in order to collect human remains and give them a Jewish burial. Expert archaeologists from the Antiquities Authority assisted in locating the missing by scanning and sifting the ashes of the vehicles. The team searched for the remains of bones, teeth, and personal belongings that were then sent for pathological examination in an attempt to extract DNA and shed some light on the identity of the victims. The efforts of the body identification process lasted for weeks on end, presenting an unprecedented challenge in the scope and severity of its findings. Adir Ben Zikri, survivor of the massacre on Route 232, who hid for hours with his partner under a bush on the side of the road, said the following about his horrific experience. I realize that they are shooting at any vehicle that approaches. Then they burn it. There's no chance of getting out alive. I ran between burnt bodies, between body parts thrown on the road and rivers of blood. We reached a rescue point. The guy next to me was mumbling. They shot at us in the car. They turned my brother into a sieve. They left nothing of him. I have nothing to bury. Bathrooms. The terrorists infiltrated the festival area in trucks and on paragliders, equipped with massive amounts of ammunition, Kalashnikov rifles, RPG missiles, and hand grenades. The festival compound was subjected to a murderous attack by bloodthirsty terrorists. The hundreds of revelers who remained at the site took shelter in the facilities and in the surrounding natural areas for hours, in hot, dry conditions. Blood-curdling screams could be heard from all around, evidence of the crimes against humanity taking place. Many were brutally murdered after being savagely abused, tortured, mutilated, raped, and burned alive. When security forces arrived in the area, the sights they encountered stunned even those most experienced in war and terrorism. When they searched for survivors, the soldiers discovered the bodies of festival participants who hid inside the bar, in bathroom stalls, under stages, inside garbage containers, and on the ground. Few survived at the bar. Of those in the bathroom stalls, just 4. Only a few dozen more survived the massacre at the festival compound, wounded in body and soul. From that moment, everyone ran to a different place. There were shots from every direction. I ran back to the festival site and saw people falling down next to me. I didn't know when my bullet would come. Some guy pushed me into a dumpster. About 20 people hid there. We didn't know when it would end. One of the girls moved her leg, and the plastic bags made a noise. Within a moment, a terrorist was in the dumpster shooting at us all. I took 4 bullets. Namagal, a survivor who hid for hours, wounded, in a garbage container on the festival grounds. Shelters. Many of those who attended the Nova Festival escaped the sudden rocket barrage in their cars, finding protection in the concrete shelters along Route 232. Dozens crowded tight into the small constructs, waiting for an end to the rocket fire, not realizing the enemy was rapidly closing in on them. Within a short time, armed Hamas terrorists who had invaded Israel blocked the shelter entrances, firing mercilessly upon all those trying to escape, hurling deadly grenades, and turning the small shelters into death traps, cheering euphorically the whole time. The horrific scenes and the agony dragged on for hours, as those trapped within lay sprawled on the ground with no access to food or water. Some managed to say goodbye to their families and document the very last moments of their lives. The attacks on the shelters stole the lives of dozens of people. The terrorists made sure there would be no survivors left, executing anyone who was still alive at close range, one by one. The few remaining survivors were saved by hiding beneath bleeding corpses or playing dead. Some of the survivors were violently kidnapped to the Gaza Strip, with some suffering from horrific wounds. Security forces who finally arrived at the various sites hours later came face to face with horrifying sights, including bodies burned to the point that they could not be identified, making it near impossible to distinguish between one victim and the next. The air was thick with the stench of burned flesh. Many victims were reported missing until the ongoing process of identifying the bodies was completed. In the shelter by Kibbutz Reem, the story of the late Einer Shapira stands out. An exceptional soldier from the Knuckle Commando unit who had spent that Saturday at the festival, he was the last one into the shelter and found himself protecting the dozens of people hiding within, though he was unarmed. Shapira stood at the entrance, prevented the terrorists from entering, and with a bit of help caught the grenades thrown in and threw them back out. With consummate heroism, he handled an inconceivable 7 grenades this way. The 8th and last grenade exploded in his hand, killing him. There were 40 of us in there, and only 7 came out. I heard people begging for help, weeping to just shoot them. We couldn't move. We were all covered by corpses. Roni Mendelsohn, a survivor of the MiG unit, shelter, near Kibbutz Reem. Sexual violence. The issue of sexual violence on October 7th and the subsequent silence among the #MeToo movement have caused much consternation. First-hand accounts, such as that given by Rami Davidian, a civilian responsible for rescuing hundreds of the festival goers, shed some light on this harrowing subject. The sights I saw there will be engraved in my mind forevermore. It's not every day that you see children tied to trees, naked girls with their legs spread-eagled, and I'm cutting them down and covering them. I cover these wonderful girls and read Shema Yisrael over all of them. Is there anybody there? As the sounds of the attack subside, only a chilling silence remains. Visitors encounter the haunting perspective of IDF officer Aaron Masses, one of the first responders at the massacre site, captured through his head camera. His voice, fraught with urgency, repeats the question, "Is there anybody here?" With these haunting words, screens open to unveil the stark reality of the tragedy. Visitors get their first glimpse of the Nova Festival remains and step into a moment frozen in time. For details about the Nova exhibition in Los Angeles, or to find out more about October 7th and the Supernova Festival massacre, visit novaexhibition.com. This is an article from the Jerusalem Post at August 11th, 2024. Please check the link at the description. Pictures gotten from internet and may not correlate with the audio. If you like the video, please subscribe. Thank you for listening.